As the main opposition, Nepali Congress has started raising voice against the Sea ideology. The ruling Nepal Communist Party is trying to impose the ideology of Chinese President Xi Jinping into the state mechanism. Foreign relations experts have decreed that the decision could rob Nepal of its choice of independent decisions on policy making. Good morning, I'm Sarah Sapsanama and these are the top stories of the hour. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli expresses discontent over the weak implementation of the current fiscal year's plans and policies, urges ministers and secretaries to perform better. NHRC seeks clarification regarding the delay in justice delivery, urges leaders to raise commitment level to deliver justice to victims of insurgency era. At least 20 people killed and 100 others injured in a 6.5 magnitude earthquake that hit Indonesia's eastern province of Maluku. Tsunami ruled out. And a two-day General Convention of Cricket Association of Nepal beginning today to elect a new executive committee. Scenario likely to lift ICC suspension on CAN. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has expressed dissatisfaction over the feeble implementation of the government's plans and policies for the current fiscal year. Oli expressed his grievance at a review meeting held in the capital yesterday. The Prime Minister's office had summoned ministers and secretaries to evaluate the performance of the ministries in the first 2 months of the ongoing fiscal year. At the meeting, Premier Oli said that the current slow pace of work would not lead the nation on the path of prosperity. The Premier also said ministers and secretaries had lacked coordination and warned them that against making excuses in any pretext. This was the first review meeting after the Prime Minister signed an agreement with the ministers to evaluate their works on 31st of July. Minister for Agriculture and Livestock Development Chakrapani Khanal later said the report presented by the Prime Minister's office showed a majority of ministries had failed to implement the policies and programs of the ongoing fiscal year. At the meeting, Premier Oli directed all the ministries not to compromise with budget implementation. The government has allocated 400 billion rupees for infrastructure development in the ongoing fiscal year. However, so far only 6.57 billion rupees has been spent. The recurrent expenditure, on the other hand, has crossed 100 billion rupees. Oli's government has been facing criticism from the leaders of his own party who have been pressing the Premier to reshuffle the ministerial portfolios to trigger changes to meet the expectations of the people. Prior to this, the Prime Minister had been reviewing the works of the ministries every quarter. However, this time, Premier Oli called for the review meeting in 2 months' time. Now, National Human Rights Commission has urged political leaders to raise seriousness towards delivering justice to victims of armed insurgency era. The Commission has stated that leaders were indifferent towards resolving the cases of the insurgency period. The Commission called upon the leaders from various parties and sought clarification regarding the delay in justice delivery and urged the government and mainstream political parties not to underestimate the victims' right to justice.
लगातार संवाद चलिरहनु पर्दछ ताकि पीडितको पीडा मुखरित गर्न अझ प्लेटफर्म पाउनु पर्दछ भन्ने आग्रह छ र क्षतिपूर्ति परिपूरणको विषयमा पीडितहरुसँग पनि छलफल हुनु पर्दछ। एकतर्फी तोक्ने प्रक्रिया चाहिँ हुनु हुँदैन। राजनीतिक उच्च स्तरीय व्यक्तित्वबाट यसलाई निराकरण गर्ने अभियान चाहिँ चलाउनु पर्दछ।
The Commission has concluded that the political leadership had posed obstacles on the functioning of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and the Commission for the Investigation on Enforced Disappeared Persons. These two commissions, among others, were established to deliver justice to victims of armed insurgency era. The Commission has also claimed that leaders had interfered in the committee formed for making recommendations for the two commissions. Meanwhile, leaders admitted their shortcomings at the event organized by the Commission. They expressed commitments of delivering justice once and for all to the victims' representatives attending the event.
प्रतिपक्ष पनि सत्तापक्ष पनि एउटा रियलाइजेसन हिजो हामीले एकले अर्कालाई बढी कमजोरी गरेको देखाउनेद्वारा प्रेरित भएर आयोगलाई सहजीकरण गर्न मद्दत गर्नुको सट्टा हामीले यति धेरै उजुरीहरू चाहिँ प्रस्तुत गर्यौं के आयोग नै पजल हुने जस्तो वातावरण हामीले बनायौँ। पहिला रियलाइज लिडरसिपले गर्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुरामा यो पटक पहिलो चाहिँ एउटा कमिटमेन्ट देखिएको छ। म तपाईँ साथीहरूको सबै पीडा सबै खाले यहाँ विभिन्न सङ्घ संस्थाबाट पनि हुनुहुन्छ, विभिन्न हन्डर ठक्कर तपाईँहरूले खानुभएको छ, त्यो हामीलाई थाहा छ। तर म अहिले यो पटक नौलो कुरा के भएको छ भने राजनीतिक नेतृत्व समझदारीबाट वान्स एन्ड फर अल एक पटक र सदाको निम्ति अब यो समस्या समाधानै गरेर जानुपर्ने हुन्छ भन्ने कुराको कमिटमेन्ट पहिलो पटक गुणात्मक खालको छ।
सम्पूर्ण न्यायका विषयलाई सम्बोधन गर्ने सम्बन्धमा द्वन्द्व पीडितका कुराहरू सुन्न आवश्यक छ। द्वन्द्व पीडित दुई थरी छन्, वास्तविकता हो। एक थरीको मात्रै कुरा सुनेर द्वन्द्व पीडितको कुरा सुनेर समस्या समाधान हुँदैन। दुवै थरीका कुराहरू सुनेर द्वन्द्व पीडितका लागि पनि न्याय दिनुपर्छ। साथसाथै शान्ति प्रक्रियामा आएका हिजोका माओवादी पार्टी आज कम्युनिस्ट पार्टी भए पनि अब यो देशमा हिजोका कुराहरू बोकेर हुँदैन, तर मेलमिलापको आधारमा समाधान गर्नुपर्ने अवस्था छ।
The victims of the armed insurgency period poured their grievances at the event, saying that their plights were left unheard. When the peace accord was signed back in November of 2006, victims were promised of justice within 6 months. However, it had taken 8 years for the formation of the two commissions. In the meantime, the committee's deadline has been extended twice but has failed to fulfill its commitments except for collecting complaints from the victims. There are over 66,000 cases filed at these two commissions. Security bodies of Nepal have started to make special arrangements ahead of the visit of Chinese President Xi Jinping in the second week of October. In the meantime, a team led by Major General of the Chinese Army has also arrived in the capital to monitor the situation of the security in Kathmandu Valley. The Chinese president's visit comes over 2 decades after former President Jiang Zemin visited the country back in 1996. President Xi Jinping's upcoming visit has been taken as highly significant in terms of strengthening the political and bilateral relationships between Nepal and China. The government has assigned the Ministry of Home Affairs to make detailed security plan along with alternative provisions during Xi's visit. The Nepal Army is responsible for overall security on the field, while the Chinese security team will be on the first line of security, followed by a commando squad of the Nepal Army. The Nepal police will lead the motorcade, while the armed police force will be in command of the hotel Xi is scheduled to stay in. Meanwhile, the issue of Tibetan refugees has been a major concern for the government. The security forces have been beefed up monitorings in transit points at Tatopani and Raswagari, along with Bodha and Swambu areas in the capital. It's time now for our segment Public Pulse, where you text us with your opinion.
Public Pulse.
The question is, what could be the reason for the share market not being able to revive itself? Your options are A, high volume of share, B, due to a high interest, and C, investors' lack of confidence. The voting is on. Type NEWS, select your option A, B or C and send it to 34001 to share your opinion with us. Time now for the sports news.
Sports news.
The 2-day General Convention of the Cricket Association of Nepal CAN begins from today. The General Convention will elect a new executive body of CAN. The election is likely to lift the suspension imposed by ICC on the cricket governing body in Nepal. The panels of former CAN presidents Vinay Raj Pandey and Chatur Bahadur Chand are in the fray. It was during the tenure of 48-year-old Chatur Bahadur Chand that the ICC had imposed the suspension on CAN. Chand's group therefore wishes to wipe out the past blemish and put the country's cricket in the right track. 73-year-old Pandey, on the other hand, has been boasting of his 4-decade-long experience in the field. The new leadership will have the immediate challenge of taking the ICC into confidence and prepare grounds for the lifting of suspension. A triangular T20 series with teams from Nepal, Zimbabwe and host Singapore will kick off today. Nepal is facing Zimbabwe in its first match of the series today. The match between Nepal and Zimbabwe will be played at the Indian Cricket Association ground in Singapore this evening, which is scheduled to start at 5:15 p.m. Nepal time. Nepal is playing against Zimbabwe for the first time in the shorter format. Prior to this, Nepal had faced Zimbabwe in the one-day International World Cup qualifiers, in which Nepal suffered a loss by a huge margin of 116 runs. Singapore is hosting the triangular T20 series in preparation of the upcoming global qualifiers. Nepal is resting most of its senior players in this tour, and youngsters have been given the opportunity to exhibit their skills. The semi-finals of the SAF Under-18 Championship are being played in Kathmandu today. Today's first semi-final will be played between Group A winners Bhutan and Group B runners-up Bangladesh at the Armed Police Force ground in Halchok at 11 this morning. Bhutan reached the semi-finals of the SAF Under-18 Championship after defeating defending champion Nepal 3-0 and holding Maldives to a goalless draw. Likewise, Bangladesh advanced to the semis with a 3-0 victory over Sri Lanka and a goalless draw against India. Meanwhile, Group B winners India will take on Group A runners-up Maldives in today's second semi-final clash, which will be held at the same venue. The second semi-final is scheduled to start at 3 this afternoon. India made it to the semi-finals, blanking Sri Lanka 3-0 and playing a draw against Bangladesh. Likewise, Maldives reached the last four, playing draws against Nepal and Bhutan. Defending champion Nepal crashed out at the group stage of the tournament, shattering its hopes of claiming a hat-trick in winning the title. That's all for the moment. Keep watching Kantipur TV HD for more news and entertainment. Have a great day ahead.